How
Yeah.
can you make good choices for your practice if all you're doing is eating, sleeping, and drinking dentistry? I was working 12 to 9, 6 days a week between the two practices. I sat there and I had an epiphany. I was like, this isn't working. I'm going under. And I just really sat there and I made a decision. I'm going to survive it for 6 more months. What got you here won't get you there. You can't solve that by being in the chair. You can only see that and you can only fix that detached.
All right. I want to welcome everybody. So you're in for a real treat today with the podcast. Obviously the goal is to provide a little inspiration, maybe to help you as a doctor trying to build a practice, just to understand that it's not a perfect journey and to share stories along the way. So today I have a special guest who will be joining me. And so you guys are in for a treat. And I'm assuming you guys can pop her in, but we've got Dr. Anna Berik. So nice enough to take some time. I think she's on a bit of a vacation and was nice enough to join me. So thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
So I was in preparation for this. I mean, I'll give a little bit of an introduction and then you can add whatever you want to it or correct anything that I'm going to say. So, Dr. Berik is a dentist, but I don't know, we won't get into when she started dentistry, but you've been a client with us since April of 2018. So going to be at 10 years before you know it. Today, you have a practice around running a team of about 10 doctors. You have 3 kids, Samantha, Sabrina, and Luke. So big accomplishment there. I think you were a single mom while building your practice for a number of years, which I think is a big deal for everyone to know. Tufts graduate, doing all this in Boston, which is, big city life, right? So Newton Dental Associates in oral surgery, and which is a really spectacular practice. And then since that wasn't good enough, you also added Bubble, your pediatric practice, which we'll get into talking about, which is really sort of a one of a kind practice, truthfully. Top provider, Invisalign provider, VIP, diamond, every different level you can be in that. Rated one of the top dentists in Boston for several years. So did I leave anything really important out in your list?
No, that makes me sound better than I am.
Come on. No, but it's a lot, right? A lot going on. Let's just sort of dive in and let's talk about, number one, how was the decision made for you to become a dentist? And how did that work? Was there some special influence by someone? Tell us that story.
Yes, I have a 4'11" mother who's a very special influence.
Yes.
I love biology. I was headed to be a sea and marine biologist, biology and chemistry, double major undergrad. And my mom's like, you're going to work at a lab. You're going to be miserable. You're not going to do this. And so then, the natural thing was, oh, maybe I'll go to med school. And then my junior year, I had a best friend who graduated a year ahead of me, went to dental school, was just enamored, loved it, said, you've got to come and see me at dental school, took me to see his cadaver, not an everyday sort of a thing. I started thinking about it then and I thought, what a great life. What a great life. You're not on call. I don't have to sleep at some hospital. You get the education, you get to care for people. I knew someday I'd have my own office, which was appealing to me. So that's kind of the short version.
It's funny. I was at a wedding recently and there was a bunch of medical doctors there. And I mean, boy, are they ever full of and proud of their whole process, aren't they? They just love bragging about how much they have to work and how important they are. It is a fascinating thing, right? So I think probably a great choice, right? And definitely some different options. Was it easy? Was it hard? How was dental school for you?
Dental school it's not hard. It's a lot of work. It's just the volume, not the content. I think by the time you get into dental school or any of the professional schools, I think you're qualified. You can do it's just the workload and your attitude. Some people went through it, on their teeth, and no pun intended, and other people went through it like, yeah, it's just what it is.
So when you started, were you an associate with somebody? What was sort of your first?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I got my license in 2 states. So when you graduate from Boston School, we took the NERBs, then the New England Regional Boards. I could work in all the New England states and a couple others. So I got my New Hampshire license as well as my Massachusetts license. So I was in a couple of different offices. I did what everybody does and going and pay your dues. I was working 12 to 9, 4 days a week and Saturday. I worked 6 days a week between the two practices.
And so I think that's one of the special characteristics of you is that you have a really great work ethic. I've met your mother. So, I mean, that is something that just for everyone listening, I think that is probably a piece of your success, would you say? Just your work ethic?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people are smarter than me, but it's hard to outwork me.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about this when you came to us, from what my records were, you had a practice, around $3 million. And I'll just say today that your practice is substantially bigger than that. And a lot of people, that would be, like a good place. Like, so, they get a $3 million practice and they believe they've sort of, that's it, right? So what kind of talk to me about your desire to keep doing more or to grow the business and kind of what you've learned about yourself. I mean, I think there's a little bit of a competitive nature that you have. Is that?
So I hear.
Yeah. No, because I think for everyone listening,
For
I think
sure.
they never learn that, the strength can be, the balcony or the basement. And so let's talk about some of those things for you.
I think I've always been growth oriented. I think one of the first things, it kind of skips ahead a little to when I met some of your team, was I'm super coachable. I read a lot. I study a lot. There's always a better version of me out there every year. Like that's, some people have their New Year's resolutions. I like to step back and sort of say, where did this year go for me?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, every year when I was early in practice, it was about being a better dentist. Honestly, that's really, cosmetics was up and coming. I was, you neglected to say I've been at this for 35 years, kindly, but I don't mind. I've earned my stripes. But yeah, so I did what every dentist or doctor, you get better at it. You're not great at it out of school. That's that Dunning-Kruger you always talk about. You think you're better than you are, and you get out there and you're like, yeah, no, I'm not. And then that's when the real learning starts, when you're out of school on all things, not just your field.
Yeah.
But I really dialed down into the cosmetics. I wasn't happy doing a drill, bill, and fill. I've never been happy at average. And so that takes work. It takes a lot of continuing ed, a lot of hours, a lot of learning how to talk to patients better than, there's an art to all of it. And you learn on the way, obviously, wisdom and experience, right? But growing. And the only competition I really, really had, you get so isolated when you're out in your own practice, right? When you're just chugging and bugging, doing your thing. And so every year I just watched my numbers. I wanted my numbers to be better than my numbers were before. And I had a prosthodontist in the practice who used to outproduce me. I remember back in the day, he could produce $1 million in 1 year. And that was a big deal back then. And I remember the year I outproduced him. I was like, yeah. That's what I'm doing. And so, I wasn't so much about the practice growth. I kept adding specialists, but I didn't necessarily, it's where your mind is at the time. I wasn't conceiving it as, hey, let's grow. I was thinking more of, this is something that would be an asset to have for my patients here, right? Like that you don't have to go anywhere else to have your root canal done, because that first office turned out to be a multi-specialty practice. Oh, that's what it is now, right? But I grew it into that. So having these people come on board and having the capacity for it, I don't know, young and dumb, but I kept adding them. So that's how initially grew.
So let me back up a little bit. So the first thing is this being a really good dentist. And I think you said something important, that it's hard to compare your qualities. I think it's illegal in most places to say you're a better dentist than anyone else in most board rules, which is kind of fascinating, right? So, it's like, when you think about that, I mean, how many years, I know you're still doing it, right? But like, do you think people stop too early at trying to be a good dentist? Like, do you think they can
way too early? I can say that because I have associates. I've had associates come and go. I work with a lot of dentists. Yeah, I think I'm still on that path.
Right.
I say to degree, and I don't mean it without humility, but there's mastery in some area. I mean, when you've done something, I don't mean mastery because I think I'm good, but I don't even know how many crowns I've done, how many veneers, how many Invisalign. Like, you get better. You get better if you care. I think there's so many sparkly things out there. I do think people get distracted from, what your main purpose was to begin with. I think if you want to run an empire, you have to rule yourself first, right?
So take me to, so you become an associate doctor essentially. When is the moment where, what were some of the things that led you, and talk about that decision and how you got your own practice and what it was like, and just, can you
So
go back there? And
yeah, so I worked for a couple of offices, like I said, when I came out. And then one office is better than another. You never work for a bunch of offices. They're all equal in your mind, right? So in the better office, the doctor who owned it and I got along very well. A lot of similarities in, our values and the kind of dentistry that, the standards that we would accept. And he didn't want to do the dentistry anymore, which was perfect for me when I was a young associate, because what other skill do I have? So, early on, he said, let's get the practice evaluated. And this would, interest in buying in that way, you're not, your own progress isn't working against you when it comes time to buy in. Loved it. And so many other stories of dentists of my generation. Yeah, that didn't work out that way. He lost money in Cisco or whatever was going on at the time. And all of a sudden, when the 5 years came due, I came around with our little written agreement and the contract and all this and said, hey, look, time to buy in. I've been saving. I'm ready. Let's go. And he was like, yeah, well. And then I kind of got the story that, being an associate was a really good job for a woman, because I was going to have, I'm like, yeah, I want what you want. I wanted my own practice. Long story short, I talked to legal counsel. And I had the best advice I ever had. My lawyer was wonderful. And he was like, yeah, you can sue the guy, but do you really want to be partners with someone you just sued? And I was,
yeah,
oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
Oh, yeah, good point. Good point. Didn't think of that. And that was the impetus right then and there. I'm like, this isn't going anywhere. I'm ready. I want to step out on my own. And that afternoon, I called a bunch of practice brokers. That's how we did it back in the old horse
Yeah,
buggy days. We called a practice
yeah.
broker. And yeah, the rest, I found the practice that I bought now, and I bought it from three owners. They had three owners, and they were having some problems with that sort of division of ownership. When three people own it, nobody owns it in terms of the accountability.
So what did you pay? Like, what did you mind
Oh,
sharing? Like, what you bought your practice for? Like, just for,
I feel like I overpaid. I don't know, maybe everybody does when they came through.
of course.
Yeah, I paid $1.8 million for it. I think when I actually joined SI, it was probably more like around 6. But we had kind of gone every year a little better, 4 million, over time. But yeah, I paid 1.8 million for it. It's completely paid off. It's been paid off for years, which is like, and it was a dump, an absolute. It was the kind of thing where the three guys had fought. It had just become old and worn, and nobody was putting money or energy or attention on any of the things, like not any of the things, which is yay. It had a big ceiling if someone would put money, time, and attention. But right after buying the practice,
So it had some space in it. So how many operatories were in
when I
it?
bought it, it was 7.
Okay.
And
So
now,
three guys all practicing in 7 ops, basically.
yeah,
I wonder why they were fighting. That's fun.
yeah, yeah. One wanted to retire. I mean, no, it was a whole list
Right.
of things. But that's
Well,
what.
okay, so then reality sets in. Do you adopt their team? Does their team stick around, or do they
Oh
leave?
my God, it was
Tell
the
me
worst.
about how difficult that
I could write a novella on what not to do when
is.
transitioning.
Give us a few things that people
Oh,
love to hear, the bad
the
stories, right? We can
staff.
talk about how great life is, but the truth is, I think sometimes
Oh
just,
man, no, that ain't the way. Everybody looks good from the outside,
yeah,
don't they? Yeah,
yeah,
no. God, the staff hated me. They were so into these 3 clicks. Now, like I did due diligence. I did the things that I knew to do and that the lawyer instructed me to do. I mean, I didn't go out there and just buy a practice without a lawyer and all those kinds of things. It isn't enough. You really couldn't know the culture of the practice. It wasn't even a word we used back then. But what the culture was and what they sort of did a very good job of hiding was the 3 of them hated each other,
mm,
clicks in the practice with their own hygienist who were on this guy's side and this guy. And so when I bought the practice, the person that they decided they liked less than them
yeah,
was
was
this.
you.
because I broke up the team, whatever the team was. Two of the doctors left within 3 months, which was the best thing to happen. And the other doctor, which at the time I thought was going to be great, that he was going to stick around for a year, I still have scars somewhere we won't talk about from what a pain that was. Dumbest thing I ever did. I should have right out the door with him. He was a troublemaker and the instigator of some of the negative talk. I'm like, sort of stupid, but anyway, that's what I was up against. I remember I had just had my second baby too when the practice closed. It took so long to close on this practice that when I put the offer in, I didn't know I was pregnant. And by the time I had a new baby. So this was my second child. So I'm trying to get back and forth to this practice. One doctor did all of the billing and accounting and that sort of fiscal things, and he did it himself. People would throw some cotton rolls on his desk and say, we need more cotton rolls. And then he would sift through all the little Henry Schein catalogs, find the cheapest price that month. And I mean, there were no systems. So I remember sitting at the desk at midnight. I haven't been home at all to my baby. I was a nursing mom, so there are complications with that. Dial-up internet. I'm trying to order cotton rolls or whatever the freak it is at 11 p.m. I've been there since 7. I sat there and I had an epiphany or a mental breakdown. I'm not sure. Yeah. It hasn't been formally diagnosed yet. I was like, this isn't working. I'm like, I'm going under. This is really, I'm in over my head here. There's like so many things. I had zero help. And I just really sat there and I made a decision. I'm like, I'm going to survive this. I'm going to survive it for 6 more months. And if I can hang in here for 6 months, nobody is going to stop me or shut me down. I couldn't think in terms of this would be the rest of my life. I think I had to narrow that focus down. Right. If I could hang in there for 6 more months. And then that was also an epiphany when I said, you know what, I need to know a lot of things I don't know right now.
So, I mean, I can see the picture, right? I can see it. You walk in probably very
33, a 30 years
bubbly and full of life. And then you got these 3 old guys bickering about everything. So the one thing I would say, and for everybody listening, and I appreciate you saying that, not to throw them under the bus, but, I just want to remind everybody that there are people, and these might be people that you buy a practice from or you employ someday. And I mean, they're just crazy. I mean, and the kind of stuff that they will defend and go to the mat on to not grow. Right? I mean, what you're talking about is the anti-growth personality, right? And what I think is important, everyone knows that those people exist. And if you have them in your life, you have to cut them out. I mean, because you talk about a desire to grow, if it's grow the business or grow your income. I mean, it's just bizarre. Like, I think people don't think that, maybe you could look at it as a variation of an enemy a valid enemy to the business. Everyone says, your biggest competitor is yourself. However, I think you bring up the point, and for anybody listening who's dealing with this, I've had this happen hundreds, if not thousands of times. And even the other day, I had one of my team members got accosted by some guy, you'll love this. And he was like, I'm mad at your boss. Well, we found out, I called the guy. I was like, why did you say that to one of my team members? And he had apparently worked in an office that we worked with. He rented space. The guy was trying to grow his own business. The guy was totally belligerent against anything growth. So he asked him to leave. He was a renter. And this guy, 10 years later, apparently he's still mad at me, that's crazy, right? And of course, it wasn't even my decision, but I was like, wow, that just reminded me of that, how sad it is.
Right? And it's a story. It's a story they tell themselves, but they're more than welcome to tell everyone in the practice. And they're welcome to, like I said, don't tell me because I'm a woman and I'm not even a feminist. You know me, I'm not like that, but don't tell me this is a good position for me as an associate or that I'm not capable of something but they tell you those stories. And I think that's what's helpful about being around a group of like-minded people that are like, of course you can do it. Yeah. Oh, and better yet, you know what? I've got a good idea for you here.
Well, you're probably pretty vulnerable too at that point, right?
I don't know, but I'll tell you that.
Well, I mean, a lot more than you would be today.
Sure. Right? I think. Yeah, I'm bulletproof now compared to then, for sure. I mean, it just was so many things, and I think there's always a part in somebody's lives. You never know what's going on beneath the surface. where it's raining hard, man. It's raining. It's raining in more than one of your states. It isn't just here. It's kind of coming down. You know, I was like, I'm a terrible mother. Here's my baby, and I'm not
Yeah.
home. And here I bought this practice. Who did I think I was? But
Yeah.
I think the best thing I did, and it luck or I don't know, is I realized, you know what, I need help. And I had someone I had talked to. I just grabbed myself in one hand, called this guy up and said he owned a company back in the day, no longer around. Similar, not exactly the type of thing, but professional services
Yeah.
to help
Good.
doctors out. But I had to go get the help, man. I wasn't going to come to it on my own. At the time, it was probably one of the biggest decisions. You're going to laugh at me. And I think we can look back now. Like you said, I'm not the girl I was then. But it cost $50,000 to join this organization for a 2-year plan that they had
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
the company. I sat down with them. I told them, like, bleh, and vomited all of these issues and things. I had so many things going on. I didn't know where to start. You know what I started doing? I started cleaning. I would stay every night, pick a closet, and go find stuff from 1962, a broken thing that they hadn't thrown out. That was something in my realm of control that improved the practice a little bit. It was something I could visually see.
But seeking help was a huge part, and you've always, and I think that's something I've noticed about you is that you've always had coaches, and you're very smart and very ambitious. But that combined with a little bit of guidance and direction, a lot of people don't realize is probably the key to a lot of things for all of us. And very, very few of us could say we've done it alone. Even when somebody says you're a self-made person, there's a lot of players along the way to make you who you are, right?
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, we talk about it when we have our workshops. Tom Brady has a coach.
Yeah.
He has a throwing coach, or had.
Okay, so you go get some help. So when does it start to, I mean, thinking back, when did you start to feel like, wow, I'm gonna make it? So at the end of that 6 months, I mean, did that kind of fade in and all of a sudden,
I
you're,
kept track of that 6 months.
yeah,
You got to plant a flag once in a while to know you've made progress. And so I kept track of that 6 months. And at 6 months, we weren't closed. I didn't miss payroll.
yeah,
Patient things were going well. I've always been very kind to I care about the quality of what I do. I think the staff, we started to weed through some of the worst culprits. And I'll tell you, up until some of them have retired, I have kept some of that original staff for 25 years plus, so they weren't the troublemakers. And some people who only worked that full part-time in the beginning, a couple of the hygienists would never come to work full-time. And then after I'd owned the practice for a year or two, they're asking me, is that still available that I could come and work? So I think those were some of the signs that, it was lifting. And I did refurbish the practice, or I got renovated the practice. It took me, I had to work for a year just to get under the initial part of the loan from buying the practice. But it was so dilapidated that it really needed that. And that also just brought like this whole, like literally and figuratively cleaning house.
talk to me about the aesthetic, the aesthetic of the office. So you buy this office that is not what you want. Tell me kind of your views. I think that is probably a talent that you have for sure. And I have to encourage people a lot to improve their aesthetic, and they're not all naturally good at it. Some of them actually are very bad, meaning they have no vision, they have no style. Like, I don't know that that's a prerequisite to get into dental school, right?
Vision should be, but I never wanted to be the dentist ever, like not ever. Even though I bought this just happened. It was the right practice to buy.
Yeah.
In the right neighborhood. There were reasons I bought the practice, although from listening to the story, why did she ever buy this practice? But I never wanted to be the office you walk in and there's stains on the carpet.
Right.
I never wanted brown armchairs. Have you ever been in an office and like it's wood with just some, who created that fabric underneath it that's like doesn't match anything? So I never wanted to be that. I didn't want to look like every other office. I wanted to do high-end cosmetic dentistry. And where do high-end disposable income people, they're not in the brown chair stained carpet. It's not how I personally wanted to live. I mean, I was a new doctor. I mean, I wasn't rich having babies. I was in the same spot as everybody else, paying off my loans and stuff. But the aesthetic always had to be super clean, don't put things, I'm not a bric-a-brac. I don't want stuff on the counter. And I've always, few sayings in my life that I live by. And one of them is how you do anything is how you do everything. So if the practice looks shabby, does your work, does your billing shabby? Is your, people do read a book by its cover.
Agree.
It's a survival instinct. I'm not talking about prejudice. I'm saying we do look around. Would you go into a hospital where dead people are laying in the, I mean, be like, maybe somebody has a better doctor somewhere down the road. I'll keep driving.
I am in full agreement. Anyone listening, I think this is such an important thing, but not everybody has taste. So the problem with the brown chair is some people look at the brown chair and think the brown chair
But
is just
you have to know that
acceptable.
if your wife dresses you or your friends always have to change your outfit when you were in college for you, whoever you look to for that sort of a thing. But there's so much help out there,
Yes,
right? For that. So you have to know what, like, I knew I didn't know what I was doing in that practice, and I reached out and got help. And if design isn't your thing or you're just not interested in it, there are lots of people. I mean, there are even design schools who will get a student. I mean, there's some big.
It doesn't have to cost a lot of money.
Right. No, not at all. Even, I love the term designer imposter when you see the chair at, Mati for, $20,000, and then you see it on Wayfair and you're like, yeah, $699. That's the chair we need. That chair looks like this. I mean, I'm just joking, but there is a design element to it. Now the practice, I've redone that practice. I'm probably your other end of never doing it. I've rebuilt that office.
Yeah, how many times?
I think it's my fourth time I did it. So every so often, and I expanded my reception, and it was actually right before COVID. I did two things. I took over the suite next door and expanded, and then I sort of redid my whole reception and all this. And what I was thinking then was, you go into a really nice car dealership and there's a desk. There aren't phones, there aren't other people. You don't see the service department right behind you when you walk in. So I eliminated all that and I put literally a receptionist who would do quiet work, check in people, be really nice to them, say hello, marble floors, and then I put the check out, sort of, all the business to do make your payments and things in a different area. So the way you came in wasn't the way you came out. And it happened to be perfect. COVID came that later that year after we reopened from the refurbishment, and it ended up to be perfect entry and egress. So it sort of separated things. It made this nice quiet. I had opened the oral surgery wing at the practice with that. And it gave a nice quiet place for people to work on their computer, because if you're coming in for oral surgery, you're bringing someone with you so often, if you're a parent with a kid with third molar or whatever. So somebody's quietly waiting for you. We got their TVs out of there. We didn't need TVs in there. People have their, we needed chargers and ports.
Yeah. So talk to me about, do you keep your eyes open every day for ideas that can be extracted and applied to the practice? Was that one of the techniques that
I'm still doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm building the third practice. It's in this downtown Boston, and it's really in an old warehouse, literally from the docks, that sort of a thing. So I've got these beamed ceilings. I've got a lot of brick. I don't even remember where we were, but we were in an old district of warehouses that all had been refurbished, and they're like Schwank restaurants and things like that. I forget where I was. I didn't go in a single restaurant line. They painted the beams. They didn't paint the beams. The brick is white. The brick isn't white. Oh, what color did they do some of the piping that runs through? They painted it white and it disappeared. No, these guys kept it black and it, everywhere I go.
Take a lot of pictures, right? I mean, what people need to realize is you got a phone, take pictures of everything and anything you see that you think might be applicable, and you'll end up with some great ideas, right?
And you don't know when you're going to use it. Like even just where you're placing things. I saw something and I was like, no, I was at this hotel 5 years ago and blah, 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 blah. I couldn't pull up the photograph, but I'm really visual. I remembered. I liked it. You took a mental note, and I don't know, it came in useful. Yeah, no, I'm not sure that I'm originally that creative. You see great stuff and then you find a place to put it.
But the rule I tell people is, if you don't hear you have a nice office every week, then you don't have a nice office. If you hear it every week, you'll probably have a nice office. That works pretty good, right? It would be like, if somebody comes over to your home and just look at the body of evidence, right?
Well, and I think you also have to live out of your office a little bit. In other
Yeah.
words, it's hard to come back into your office as a stranger because after you do a project and everything's fabulous, people are shutting cabinet doors with their feet and all the things that happen. Your rug, somebody spilled the coffee, you've had the cleaners come, you get it painted, but it's the cost of doing business that you're going to reinvest in that
Yeah.
office. Or, I mean, some people move offices, but you're just going to have to continue, even if you don't, I mean, people move from their home and their kitchen is 35 years old, they don't redo it. And they want to move to a house with a new kitchen. It's like you have to keep up with that stuff in an office where it matters. People notice. Patients
So,
notice.
question, did any of the doctors that you bought the practice ever return to see it? How
The guys did, and he told me, this is exactly what I would have done.
That's great. Oh my God. Of course it was. Yeah, that's sure.
It's true that
That's a perfect response of, somebody like who just would never do it, right? Let's jump a little bit to, so you're raising a family, you're figuring out the business, there's a lot, right? And so kind of fast forward to today, you build that practice, have multiple additions, and like were you thinking about the patient? Like, because this is the hardest thing for me to teach people, like, so when you started adding specialists and things, could you see that the patients needed more and that you could,
yeah.
that was sort of let's just keep stacking on what they need?
Yeah. And why send it out of the office?
Right.
The problem with specialist as a GP office, which is primarily what it started out as, was that you send them away. And what's the patient's experience? You've given them a piece of paper or a card or some sort of referral thing. They've got to go make that call. The second they leave your office, they're done with dentistry. They've got a da-da-da. And it's probably something they don't want to do unless they're in pain and they're calling for a root canal. But the person you send to the periodontist, no offense, periodontists who are listening, but it doesn't hurt. They don't want to do it. It's more money. 6 months later, they're back in your office and they haven't gone. Right? What if you could just walk up to my front desk and book that?
So in your office, today is pretty much everything contained in that main office?
Everything except pedo. So I had to make a decision. We did see children initially, and none of us wanted to. I mean, I'm doing high-end cosmetics. I had to answer the age-old question, what do I do and for whom? What do we do? What does my company do and for whom? I mean, you were around during, it really wasn't pedo. We hadn't solicited children. We didn't see a lot of children. Some of the kids had grown up in the practice. They were crawling. We didn't have necessarily, we had one little toy chest for children. My other practice. I went completely the other. Once you make that decision, once you can see it, you can't unsee it. So if you were coming in, Jay, and you were going to spend $40,000 for some cosmetic work in my office, did you need to be hearing the kid next door crying and saying they didn't want to do the filling or have the cleaning or whatever? So it really didn't make sense. Everything I was doing with growing the specialist and that sort of stuff just didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense anymore why we were seeing children. And then I started to think about why I really believe. I mean, all I do is rehabs and cosmetics and Invisalign sort of stuff. So even the restorative doctors in my office are restorative only. All the specialists do the root canals. The oral surgeon does the extractions. The perio does the perio. So we're really limited in the services we offer. So we almost just get to be restorative specialists. So I really believe in specialty care. And I'm like, why would I believe in specialty care and then look at the kids and go, oh, they don't need that. We're good enough for them. And it's not true. They're not always just little versions of us. I added, and the more I started to think about what would be easy to come here, make it easy, make it great, make it one-stop shopping for people. People are busy and nobody wants a root canal, but isn't it nice that you could go up to the front desk, book it, and you could come right back in and see, know where you're parking, know where you're going. It takes
So
stress out of
So just keep building that out. And then eventually you decided to go and to build the pediatric practice, right?
Yep.
And so you just go in big, right? You're like, I'm going to make the craziest pediatric practice possible basically, right?
Really the questions, I read a book on innovation, and people start to innovate by asking questions. And when you're
Yeah.
Elon Musk, you ask questions and you come up with something that everybody needs that they didn't know they needed, and you make $1 zillion. But I read this book on innovation, and I started to ask, everyone goes, "Oh, I hate going to the dentist." I'm like, what if we raised a generation of kids that doesn't hate going to the dentist? What would that look like? Okay, what would it take?
Mhm.
What would it take? Well, it certainly wasn't coming in my adult practice, right? So that would take a different space. What would that space look like? And what is it like to be the parent bringing a kid in? Well, if it sucked to be the kid, it sucks to
Yeah.
be the parent trying to get your kid to go in and cooperate. And are you bribing them? Oh, we'll have ice cream after. Or some of your kids are good, some are bad. Some parents get so what does that all look like? And that really began that whole, and I had a lot of time on my hands during COVID to think that baby over.
Mhm. And so you're really doing a startup practice. You probably spend more to renovate that space than you did to buy your first practice, right? I mean, you probably spent a
Double
yeah.
without a single patient. Yeah. Yeah.
That's big. But isn't that funny? So I think you probably got a good deal on your practice. You were saying you overpaid. It probably all worked out. But so, okay. And so you do not treat patients in that practice, though.
No, no.
So this is a practice that you start, other people, you hire people. I think obviously that wasn't the easiest thing out of the gate, right? There was some stress with that. But just talk about finding good doctors a little bit and what your experience has been with that and the challenges with that as well.
I think in my particular case, I've got a couple challenges with good doctors. If I'm hiring for the main practice, we're a really sophisticated organization. I can't hire right out of school. I got to have somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's a different echelon of person, and they're already probably working somewhere. They're not unsuccessful. If they're unsuccessful somewhere else, I mean, unless it's completely a cultural reason, they're not going to be successful with me either. We tried to hire younger dentists, doesn't work. I mean, I'm hiring 85-year-old dentists, but that doesn't work. Specialists are different. And in the pediatric and orthodontic practice, you're getting most of these pedos right out of school. Everyone is. Occasionally you'll find one that's unhappy at a
Yeah.
current office, and you'll mitigate over. I think my biggest mistake in the pediatric practice, well, not that there weren't many, but I think one of the problems was I felt that as a GP, I wasn't entitled to tell the pediatric dentist how this should come down. And that absolutely was inaccurate thinking. 100% not good thinking. Because not only do I know how to get it done, a little tooth, a big tooth, what difference does it make? If they want to say that, some developmental thing with a child, I'll take a back seat to that. I know what I don't know. But how to be a good doctor, how to talk to parents, how to talk to patients, how to care, how to have a standard, how to stay on time, how to bill, how to boom, 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 boom. I do know that, I do know that. And I don't think I took a big enough presence initially. And once I did, culture changed. There was no real leader until culture changed.
Mm. So I think that's a good for everyone listening to this. And this is one of the things that in helping coach doctors to really become the head of a team of doctors, I think that thing you just described gets repeated in 20 different ways. The feeling of that you shouldn't do something. We even have this with a lot of doctors who hire an associate doctor and then never go in the room with them. You got to trust your magic sauce, right? You got to trust that it doesn't really matter. You got to be in there. You got to teach those things you just described, right? Don't you think those are the real skills? I mean, you need to have clinical skills, but they really have to become good at dealing with people.
You don't get to practice your clinical skills unless somebody says yes.
Yeah.
So all those other things are not fluff. And to really bring people on board with that is a different skill set than who needed to become a good dentist. That is a different set of skills. It's a different set. And some people have it and some people don't. Everybody can get better at it.
Yeah.
I think the best advice I got from you during that chaotic period for me was you got to get down on that transactional level. Those were your exact words. but I've read it in other things. I was just reading Jocko and the Navy SEAL stuff again. And he was like, you got to get out on the front line. You got to go down there and you got to stick your nose in and you got to talk to the troops and it's how you start trust. It's how they start listening to you. It's how you find out what's really going on. It is a different monkey for sure. Being out of practice and working in it versus not working in the office at all. Not only is scaling interesting, and where the division of your labor is, but for sure, not working in a practice is a different set of skills.
Okay, so today, how many total people do you employ? What does that look like?
I'm over 50. And then we're going to start hiring for the new office as well. So yeah,
so when you think about the 50 and how many were in that office in those early days that you bought, right?
I just had a hygienist retire after.
No, but I mean, like when you bought that office and you walk in kind of on, let's say a year into owning that office or 6 months into owning your first office, is there 5, 6 people, 7 people? Hey, what is the team?
Oh yeah, so I replaced the 3. So there's 2, 3. We probably had 4 doctors, as many assistants, to assist them, and a couple hygienists. And so yeah, now it's a different world. The original practice was about 7 ops, and now it's 16 ops. So, and I've taken the hall, so I can't expand up there anymore.
Yeah. What is the difference? I mean, what I think a lot of people, is when we talk about, building a large practice and a large organization, almost every doctor's initial reaction is that if I go from the small practice, big practice, they think that it's going to be a multiplication of the exact same problems that they have, and their mind just can't even get around it. So can we talk a little bit about how untrue that is and what are the benefits of having a larger organization?
Again, I use different terminology. I just said it's a completely different set of skills, but that also applies to your expansion. You've got to have systems. You really have to have systems.
Yeah.
And you have to have operating systems that I'm now thinking this late in my life and my career, those same operating systems you're operating in all your different realms with, right? Like you're applying them into your life, your financial part of your life, your family, your office, but you have to have systems, and you have to be organized. It's different when it's just you. You'll pull the extra day, you'll pull the extra patient, it's completely different. Now you've got to trust other people. And you've got to trust that you know what they're saying when you're not standing there. We now have an insurance team that's not even in my office, right? Like that's now where we've grown to, is I have a little insurance center. And so what are they saying to people? Are those phone calls being met? I know what they're saying to people. We track and monitor, we have SOPs, we have training, we have a lot of stuff. But those are the kind of things. And I think what got you here won't get you there. I'm still growing and learning. Moving to 3, I'm expecting a different set of challenges than I had. I definitely learned from opening that pediatric. I learned a lot of lessons. And I don't intend the world to revisit you with them, because if you learn, the universe doesn't revisit you with the same problem. But
Right.
I expect different challenges, and that growth of changing, if you're not changing, you're dying, because nothing stays the same. So how could you possibly stay the same?
Well, tell me though, so having that big of an organization, what are some of the benefits to you? Like what, as you think about it versus the way it used to be? I mean, can you be gone now? Like, do you have the ability to leave the practice? I know
Yeah.
I know you're not thinking about it, but
Talking to you from vacation. Not only do I have the ability to leave the practice, I have the ability to use a whole lot of other skill sets, ones I choose to use. You talked about that design element. I'm building this third practice. I love building. I designed this thing. I'm building a private corporate office with a teaching center below it. So like this is some fun stuff for me, and I loved being a dentist. So I'm in the chair 2 days a week. But those other 3 days a week, I create how I want to do. Do I have to take meetings? Do I have to meet with contractors? Do I have to, meet with my doctors? I have to do a lot of those things, but that opens that window to do those things.
right.
And yet the whole practice doesn't depend on me going in and doing one more crown this week. Like
Right.
that isn't there anymore.
Yeah. you also have a good team. You have people that can handle marketing, people that can handle, right? I mean, that is the piece I think a lot of people don't realize, that there are some, as your business grows, you just have to add some new capacities. And usually we have to learn the hard way, a statistic goes down or something bad happens, and then, and you're not taking care of it, right? I think for a lot of doctors listening, that's the hardest part. It's hard when you're by yourself. You never say to yourself, hey Jay, or hey Anna, it's hard to look in the mirror and go, you're totally failing at this thing that you're truly responsible for. You're not giving it any time or any of attention. And I'll remind everybody that the patients always, supersede your attention. And it's a typical doctor in a typical office has very little ability to concentrate on anything but what's right in front of them. So how have you, I know we've talked a lot about this, but kind of finding that space where you're not on the floor, how important was that to the building your organization?
Killer, because there are some things that only I can do, right? And if I'm not doing those things, they're not getting the gap you're talking about, the missing pieces. And there are things that I do suck at doing, but that's where you have to employ someone else to do what you're not good at or what you hate doing. You're not going to be good at something you don't like to do either. I don't answer my own phone. So if we think about it in such a simple thing like that, well, of course, doctors would agree with you. Of course, Jay, I don't answer my own phone. Why would you be doing your own marketing if you're not a creative writer? If you're
Right.
interested in taking a bunch of pictures or being on,
Sure.
and knowing how to post to Instagram or what, I don't even know what there is because I don't do my own marketing because I'm not great at it. I have no interest in doing it. But it's important. It's really, really important. You can be the best dentist in the world, but if nobody knows you're out there, where are the patients coming from? To fill those needs, and it is hard to see them, you really have to detach. You really have to, you talked about it in one way and Jocko talked about it in another. It's just amazing because you were talking about having your eyes down. Do you have your eyes down, meaning you're doing the dentistry or whatever, or do you have your eyes up? And then, in the military version of it, were you looking through the rifle scope, which you can only see this, or did you bring your head up, detach, and look at the full situation, which is the only way you can make tactical decisions, right? Like, how can you make good choices for your practice if all you're doing is eating, sleeping, and drinking dentistry, right? Like literally the thing, not the industry. It's made me much calmer. It's made things more at a distance. I'm not nearly as reactive.
I know we got to be sensitive to your time, so let me talk about one more thing. So clearly, this issue of control is a strength and a weakness. And so, what are some of the things that you've done or experiences you've had in trying to learn how to control something without controlling it? Right? I mean, is that just still a challenge every day? But
there's a balance and it's a moderation. You mentioned it since we've been on this call, between your greatest strength and like having control over your organization, knowing where things are at, knowing the pulse of the practices, all of that's really, really important. Micromanaging, is useless. It's a disease of the anxious.
we do it. We all do it,
And
right?
sometimes you need to step in. When something isn't getting done properly, sometimes you do need to go in, micromanage, show them how to do it a little bit, retrust your team and step back out, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the way the play goes. That control of oneself when you are working like I work, chairside. I can't answer for everybody, only me.
Yeah.
And then you get a bad review because some other doctor in your practice said something callous or wasn't concerned enough, or someone was short with them on the phone, and you're like busting your buns to get new patients in there. You're like, here I am, everybody that comes through the door, that's lack of control. But you can't solve that
Right.
by being in the chair. You can only see that and you can only fix that.
That's great. Well, listen, thank you so much for being on. I hope everyone can extract something from those stories, and certainly the can-do attitude and just this continual learning, right? Because I think that's a huge piece of your story. And not to let your ego get in the way, which, I think it points for all of us, but knowing how to control it is a huge deal, right? And stay humble and stay interested in growing.
And I think growth and continued education keeps you humble. The more I learn, the more you realize, wow. I mean, even the story, tonight, you and I just touching on some of the past, I was like, wow, what I didn't know fills volumes. And
You,
I already know I still don't, right? But like, wow.
I love it. All right. Thanks for being on. Thanks for the time. We'll
Okay.
see you guys the next one.
See you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.